Hello, and welcome to the next review of Foos Entertainment. Earlier I reviewed Phantasm and did mention that I was going to be reviewing two franchises at once. The second franchise is the Psycho films. They don't have their individual packaging, so this is the best I can show. But all four of them are actually in there. And also we'll be reviewing the remake as well. Psycho came out in 1960. It's an old black and white movie. Probably the most famous and most known Alfred Hitchcock movie. Even more popular than The Birds and Vertigo. Interesting enough, Psycho is based off of a book and very well brought to life by Alfred Hitchcock. But some people can make a small argument that it's actually based off of the real-life serial killer Ed Gein, who I believe was doing his thing around either 1953 or 1955. Some time back then. It really depends upon when the book was actually written. It was inspired by true events of that psychopath. And what he would do is he actually would murder old women with a shotgun and actually do weird things like wear their skin, make bowls out of their skulls. That's the most diabolical stuff you can think of. He also would grave rob, and he did bring his mom back to life by wearing her body. Deranged stuff, but what I feel is inspired with the character Norman Bates is the mama's boy aspect of real-life serial killer Ed Gein. He was very much like Norman Bates, looked very harmless and nerdy, very skinny, average-looking dude, but looked a little off and weird. Kind of like Norman Bates in a lot of ways, so that's why I always kind of, when I think of Norman Bates, I kind of think of that real-life serial killer Ed Gein. Maybe they are related in that aspect, maybe not. It really depends upon if the novelist who wrote the book actually was inspired by those true events or not. Either way around, doesn't really matter. The premise of Psycho, for anyone who's actually never seen the movie, and again, that's pretty shocking if you had never seen Psycho. Everybody has seen Psycho. But for people that actually have not seen Psycho, Psycho is pretty much about this. The film opens up with a bank clerk by the name of Marion Crane. He works for some sort of bank. Never really does tell you which bank it is in the movie. Well, her boss has this guy who is buying a house, and he's paying for a deed in cash. A very large amount of cash. And she takes it upon herself to take the money and run with it. And from going from city to city, she finally ends up in the middle of nowhere, where she comes across this hidden motel known as the Bates Motel, to where she finds a very abnormal, kid-like man who runs the motel by the name of Norman Bates. And believing that Norman Bates' mom is living up in the house, which we later find out she isn't. I'll get to that. So this is our safe argument, when he hasn't seen the movie, that his mom in the house was complaining about her being there. Brought her some food from the house and took her into her cabin that she was staying in. She brought up that she didn't approve of the mistreatment that his mom was doing to him. And I guess that upset him or something. The mom comes down and stabs to death Marion Crane, and she's pretty much dead. It's one of the most famous death scenes of all time. It's a shower scene that everybody's familiar with. And all of a sudden, the family of the deceased, as well as private investigators, are trying to find out what happened to her. And they all eventually end up at the motel. Private investigator gets killed by Norman Bates' mom. And the older sister of the deceased woman and the deceased woman's boyfriend are trying to discover the mystery about what happened to her. In doing so, they discover that Norman Bates' mom has been dead for 10 years due to the fact that Norman Bates committed matricide and killed his own mom. And basically, to keep her alive, he would actually masquerade as his mom. And it's later discovered that there's actually a dominant personality and a weak personality. The weak personality was Norman Bates. The dominant personality was his mom. That he took on the persona, literally, of his mother. And when he would kill his mom, he would have no memory of it when he went back to his host personality of being Norman Bates. Very interesting movie, in my opinion. A good shocker. It's not my favorite of the well, I call it a franchise, but they call it the Psycho Legacy is actually what they call it. But it's not my favorite film of the Psycho Legacy. It's not a bad movie. There are lots about this movie I like. Anthony Perkins is Norman Bates. He will always be Norman Bates. I don't care for that TV series, Bates Motel. And although I have very little problems with the remake of Psycho with Vince Vaughn and Anne H. and William Macy and Viggo Mortensen, it still does not live up to the original 1960 movie. Norman Bates is only played well to the perfect T and I by Anthony Perkins. He's done it 4 times and did a brilliant job in every one of those times. Alright, overall quality of the movie. This is 1960. And believe it or not, Panavision camera systems were not actually used until 1965. I believe the first film to actually use this camera technology was Thunderball, the 5th James Bond movie. Until then, movies used 1/66x1 camera lenses. And there were old Kodak and Polaroid camera systems, I believe, or Technicolor systems, or whatever they were used at the time. And that's the case with the first Psycho movie. It is in 1/66x1 wide frame. It does not use a Panavision camera lens. Give me a second here. The sound. This does contain a 5.1 DTS HD master audio track. I'm surprised, actually, because this movie originally only had a mono track during its theatrical run. Now, I actually did this on purpose with this movie because something that you guys can really trust about me is that I watch the movie before I get in front of the camera here and talk to all of you about the movie. So I don't go off memory at all. I actually watch the movie and then make the review. And something else I always try to do is I try to review the movie as if I am you. Now the way that I prefer watching this movie is with the the CSD cinema enhancement mode of mono movie. But I didn't do that this time because I wanted to give you guys a really clear review from your point of view. So I watched it with standard cinema sound decoding enhancement, so standard mode instead of movie mono mode. I did that for your benefit because I wanted to do a good review of the sound. I'm surprised. I really am. For a film that was made in 1960, this actually has a pretty good amount of sound for a movie that old, off of all the speakers. Now, the vast majority of the movie is all still very much in front of you. But the fact that there were some very, very dramatic sequences in which they made fair and good use of the surround speakers surrounding you was impressive, especially for a film made in 1960. So I got nothing but good things to say about the sound on that regard. The picture, well, like I said, this picture is in black and white, people. But I don't own too many black and white movies. But out of the black and white movies that I do own, I have to say that the best looking one is Psycho. So Psycho has probably one of the best looking black and white movie experiences you'll find on Blu-ray or DVD. So yeah, I had no problem with the picture either. I even had a good detailed look. You could actually see an HD transfer, which is very interesting considering it's a black and white movie in its universal black and white movies. Because I do have the Universal Monster Showcase, which I will be doing later this month, I might add. That's, 1931's Dracula, Way for Out, Creature of Black Lagoon from 1965, I believe, or 1970. But yeah, and those are in black and white as well. But those do not look nearly as good as Psycho does. Psycho has a much bigger experience than any of those movies. So I can definitely say that I'm quite a big fan of the experience of the first Psycho movie. It's definitely an interesting watch for an old movie. Now, what is my favorite Psycho movie? Well, I'll get to that when I get to the sequels. Now, keep in mind, guys, this does not have the Scream Factory releases for 2, 3, and 4. And then, yes, I do know that 2 and 3 from Scream Factory, their collector's editions, do come with 5.1 audio. But I used to have those before I got this box set. I didn't even know they made this. I just came across it one day at Best Buy and got it's like, wow, you can actually get all one box set. Well, the reason why I had no problem with 2, 3, and 4 not having 5.1 audio is because I screened both versions for 2 and 3, and surprisingly enough, these beat Scream Factory. The picture was, in my opinion, a much better HD transfer. And one thing I always noticed about Psycho 2 and 3 from Scream Factory is it didn't have that much in the terms of really being 5.1 sounding. They still kind of sounded like Adobe Surround stereo source track. And if you're going to have a movie like that, just watch it with Adobe Surround stereo sound source, which is what 2, 3, and 4 have in this box set. Which is why I have a problem with it.